If you grew up in the 60s or 70s, you remember those late night weekends when local television stations would air the old science fiction movies. Some of them became classics. Others were just plain strange. One of the greatest examples of these arrived in 1964. The movie featured an alien creature that looked like a giant shag carpet, moved slower than a Sunday afternoon stroll, and somehow managed to terrorize an entire town. Called The Creeping Terror, people have argued over whether it's one of the worst science fiction movies ever made. But after spending some time with this bizarre little film, I think it deserves a little love. It might just be one of the most entertaining cinematic disasters ever put on film. Let me explain. Fantasy, sci-fi, horror, Rerun Zone. There was a time when discovering a new movie didn't require a recommendation list. Maybe it was late on a Friday night after the local news had signed off. Maybe it was a rainy Saturday afternoon when there wasn't much else on television. Or maybe you caught it at the drive-in because it was playing as the second feature and nobody really cared what came after the main attraction. Back then, science fiction movies were everywhere. Giant ants, radioactive monsters, alien invaders, killer blobs, and creatures from worlds nobody could pronounce. Some became legendary classics. Others disappeared into the late-night schedules of local TV stations. But every once in a while, you'd stumble onto something so strange that you never forgot it. That's where The Creeping Terror comes in. When it was released in 1964, this independent science fiction horror film seemed to have all the ingredients of a typical drive-in monster movie. A mysterious spacecraft lands in California. People begin disappearing. Police investigate while an unknown creature lurks somewhere in the darkness. At least, that was the idea. The film follows police officer Martin Gordon, played by the movie's director and producer Vic Savage, as he tries to solve the mystery surrounding the strange visitor from space. When I say that the creature is lurking, I use that word generously. This isn't the kind of monster that crashes through buildings or chases terrified victims through the woods. It barely seems interested in moving at all. Watching it today, you can't help but find yourself talking to the television. Run! Take 2 steps to the left. Do literally anything. Instead, the victims seem oddly committed to standing perfectly still while this slow-moving alien inches closer and closer. It's ridiculous, but that's exactly why so many people remember it. Beneath the bargain basement effects and awkward performances is a group of filmmakers who really believed they were making the next great science fiction thriller. They didn't know that they were creating one of the most unintentionally entertaining cult movies of all time. And as strange as the movie is, the story behind how it was made is even stranger. One of the best parts about growing up during the golden age of monster movies was that you never knew what was going to show up on the screen next. Sometimes you get Ray Harryhausen dinosaurs, or giant radioactive creatures destroying entire cities. Other times, well, you got this. Every kid remembers seeing a movie monster that was supposed to be terrifying, but ended up being hilarious instead. That's part of the fun of these old B-movies. Their limitations were part of their personality, and few creatures have more personality than the one in The Creeping Terror. Movie history gave us King Kong climbing skyscrapers, Godzilla leveling Tokyo, and the Blob slowly consuming everything in its path. Then along comes a giant alien shag carpet that's folded over a station wagon. From some angles, it resembles an oversized fuzzy blanket with floppy teeth. From others, it looks like somebody raided the upholstery department and hoped audiences wouldn't notice. But somehow, this was the unstoppable alien menace threatening all of Southern California. And the funniest part is the way people react to it. The creature slowly inches toward perfectly healthy adults who could escape with the slightest bit of effort. But instead, they stand there screaming as if they've forgotten that humans possess the ability to walk. You can't help but laugh. Of course, independent filmmakers in the early 1960s didn't have million-dollar special effects budgets. They built spaceships out of plywood, monsters out of foam rubber and fabric, and hoped that the audience's imagination would do the rest. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it produced the creeping terror. 60 years later, this odd-looking creature has accomplished something thousands of expensive movie monsters never managed to do. It's unforgettable. Long after you've forgotten the dialogue, you still remember that giant fuzzy alien slowly swallowing people who politely waited their turn. The filmmakers were trying to make audiences scream. Instead, they accidentally made generations of movie fans smile. Some of the greatest classics in movie history were made with very little money, but an awful lot of imagination. The people behind them weren't trying to make cult movies. They were just trying to make the next great adventure that would have audiences lining up to see it. In fact, that's exactly what the people behind The Creeping Terror were hoping for. The movie was the dream of Vic Savage, who also went by the name A.J. Nelson. He wasn't just a director. He produced the film, starred as the leading man, and became the driving force behind nearly every part of the production. That's either incredible dedication or a sign that the budget had already disappeared. The early 1960s were a golden age for independent science fiction. All across America, ambitious filmmakers believed that they could compete with Hollywood if they just had a good monster and enough determination. Unfortunately, determination doesn't always pay the bills. Money problems haunted The Creeping Terror from the beginning. Production reportedly stopped more than once, while additional financing was rounded up, leaving cast and crew waiting for the cameras to roll again. Little by little, the dream became harder to hold together. Then came one of the strangest stories connected to the film. According to one source, the original monster costume was allegedly taken away by the special effects creator after not being paid. It forced the production team to build a replacement from whatever materials they could find. Whether every detail of that story is completely true has been debated for decades, but the final creature certainly looks like it had a very unusual origin. Believe it or not, that wasn't even the biggest problem. Much of the movie's original dialogue suffered from serious audio issues, leaving the filmmakers with footage that they couldn't use. At that point, they faced a choice: spend money they didn't have to reshoot scenes, or find another way to tell the story. The solution they came up with would accidentally become one of the most unforgettable parts of the entire movie. And if you wonder why someone seems to be narrating every single thing that happens on screen, we're about to get into it. Everybody's familiar with narration. Nature documentaries, educational films, travelogues. There was always a deep voice somewhere telling you exactly what you were looking at. But The Creeping Terror takes that idea to a whole new level.
This man's name is Martin Gordon. The lovely girl beside him is Brett, his bride of 2 wonderful weeks. It's late August. They're returning from their honeymoon to their home in quiet, peaceful Angel County, California. Martin's Uncle Ben is sheriff of Angel County, and Martin is his senior deputy. Martin has high hopes of succeeding his uncle when Ben retires.
The narrator doesn't just introduce the story, he practically becomes the star of the movie. A couple gets into a car. The narrator tells you that they're getting into a car. Someone looks worried. The narrator explains that they're worried. The monster appears on screen. And just in case you somehow failed to notice the giant fuzzy alien inching across the countryside, the narrator is there to tell you that yes, that's the monster. Watching it today feels less like a movie and more like sitting beside someone while they explain every scene 5 seconds after it happens. As odd as it seems, there was actually a reason for all of it. During production, serious sound problems left much of the original dialogue unusable. Some scenes couldn't be salvaged, and the filmmakers didn't have the money to bring everyone back for expensive reshoots, so they improvised. Instead of replacing the dialogue, they hired a narrator to stitch the entire story together. By the end, that calm, matter-of-fact voice becomes another character in the film, quietly describing events that are already happening right in front of your eyes. The filmmakers were trying to solve a production problem. but they accidentally gave The Creeping Terror one of its most recognizable trademarks. And the strange behind-the-scenes story doesn't end there. In fact, the mystery surrounding the man who made this movie may be even stranger than the giant alien carpet that stole the show. One of the things I love about old movies isn't just what's on the screen. It's the stories behind the camera. Every forgotten B-movie has a group of people who believed they were creating something truly special. They weren't trying to make a cult classic. They were just chasing the dream that every filmmaker chases. At the center of The Creeping Terror was Vic Savage, also known as A.J. Nelson, real name Arthur Nelson White. He wasn't just a director. He produced the film, starred in it, and poured everything he had into getting it made. Unfortunately, things didn't exactly go as planned. According to people who later investigated the production, Savage was a charismatic promoter with a gift for convincing people to believe in his vision. He reportedly raised money from local investors and supporters, some of whom were offered small roles in the movie as part of the experience. For a while, it looked like the dream might actually come together. Then, reality set in. Money dried up. Production slowed. Crew members and suppliers complained about unpaid bills, and stories of behind-the-scenes disputes began to circulate. Over the years, those stories have grown into Hollywood folklore. It makes it difficult to separate documented fact from decades of rumor. One thing, however, seems beyond dispute. The production was a mess. And as the project came apart, Savage simply vanished, leaving others to piece together whatever footage and audio that they could salvage. Exactly what happened to portions of the original soundtrack is still debated today, but much of it was either unusable or missing by the time the movie reached post-production. The solution was to narrate almost everything. It wasn't ideal, but it definitely made the movie memorable. Remarkably, The Creeping Terror survived all of this chaos. Against every imaginable obstacle, it eventually reached audiences, and it slowly found a second life among fans of bargain basement science fiction and cult cinema. As for Vic Savage himself, his life after the film remains almost as mysterious as the movie he created. He died in 1975 at the age of 41, leaving behind a single feature film that continues to fascinate cult movie lovers more than 6 decades later. Thousands of low-budget monster movies have vanished into obscurity, but The Creeping Terror has refused to disappear. Somehow, against all odds, this lumbering alien carpet crawled its way into movie history, and it's still inching along today.
It's no airplane.
Could be one of our missiles.
Or one of theirs.
You could be right, honey. Don't think we have anything this big.
So after all that, is The Creeping Terror really one of the worst sci-fi horror movies ever made? Well, from a purely technical standpoint, yeah, it's hard to think otherwise. The acting is uneven. The pacing moves at the same speed as the monster. The effects wouldn't have impressed anyone even in 1964. And the narration explains things that never needed explaining. And the creature itself has become one of the most recognizable monsters in cult movie history. Not because it's scary, but because it looks like it escaped from a carpet warehouse. The victims stand there, hesitate, panic, and then politely allow themselves to become lunch. But here's the thing. By almost every traditional standard, this movie is a failure, and yet, it found an audience that genuinely loves it. Late night TV, home video collectors, MST3K fans, and now, apparently me, making a video about it. Maybe that's because the movie itself is funny, and the story behind it is a genuinely fascinating piece of film history. A forgotten director's failed attempt to make a classic sci-fi film that accidentally became a sci-fi cult classic. So back to the question, is The Creeping Terror really one of the worst science fiction films ever made? Well, I'm not sure. I guess I'm going to have to leave that up to you. But it's definitely one of the most memorable, that's for sure. And now that you know the real story behind it, maybe one of the most fascinating too. Thanks for taking this trip back with me to one of Hollywood's most lovable disasters and one of its strangest true stories. You can watch the entire movie for free here on YouTube. I'll drop a link below. If you've ever seen The Creeping Terror before, let me know in the comments. Did you already know the real story behind it? And if there's another worst movie ever made you want me to dig into next, drop it below. Who knows? I might already be working on it. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most unforgettable movies aren't the masterpieces. They're the ones that dared to dream big, fell apart spectacularly, and somehow became legends anyway. This is Rich from Rerun Zone. Have a good night.